This is Face the State for Sunday, April 13th. For Christians, it's the start of Holy Week, and a state senator wants to make Good Friday even more important to all Pennsylvanians. It's a state holiday, is what he's saying. What does that mean for other religious days? We're looking into it. Term limits are being talked about again, but this time from one of the newest members of Congress, the possible hidden advantage of limiting time in office. And for those in Harrisburg now, the House is a razor-thin majority for the Dems. We'll see how they navigate those numbers with the minority whip. Next on Face the State.
CBS 21 News presents Face the State with Joel D. Smith, a look at the issues and politics that shape Pennsylvania.
It would be majority whip is what we're going to be talking about with that. But we're going to start with this. Good Friday is coming up just a couple days away. My first guest this morning has a bill to make that day a state holiday. It's Republican Senator Doug Mastriano. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a while. I am so glad to be back with you, Joel. Thank you.
All right. Yes, we want to make sure that people know that the traffic is not dangerous behind you. Otherwise, you'd have a big yellow vest on. But we do appreciate you showing off the local town that you like so much behind you.
I love Gettysburg. That's my office right there.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, very cool. Well, here are the numbers. 73% of Pennsylvanians profess to be Christian. Some of your numbers you were sharing with us. So you want to join some other states who are doing this already. New Jersey, Delaware, North Carolina, Texas, and Kentucky. Why is this important to you?
It's a big week for Christians, and the majority of our population, of course, is Christian in this democracy that we call it. And it's a big time for family, for get-togethering, and for gathering together and remembering this most holy of holiest weeks for us, which often coincides with Passover. This week, a week difference. But, it's a big deal. So I'm like, let's codify it into law. Even New Jersey has it. Are you kidding me? But, Joel, I submit this bill. I put out this memo. We go down to our legislative records branch here to assign a bill number to it. And their job is to go through to see, how we put the right language into place. And guess what? We're breaking this on CBS 21. It's already a law. It was recognized in 1893. So I'm turning my bill into a resolution to reaffirm that this we have a bill in place. We have a law in place, actually, that recognizes Good Friday as a holy weekend. And it's supposed to be a state holiday, and it's been such in 1893. The best I can recollect, Joel, and maybe you can help me with this here, but it looks like in the 70s and 80s, it kind of faded away from being enforced as a state holiday.
Enforced. That's interesting. So when did you come across this? How did you actually find that that's what's already there?
Just a couple of days ago, actually, I heard back from my chief of staff in Harrisburg, and he's like, "Hey, sir, we got some good and bad news here. Your memo has been received by the processors in Harrisburg here, and we're about to sign a bill number to it, but it's already a state holiday." And so I'm like, okay, that's good news, but it's not recognized as such, at least not in practice, even though it's on the books. So I'm like, let's do a resolution reaffirming our stance that Good Friday is a great day to take off, to celebrate with your family. And I'm calling upon Josh Shapiro here to implement it.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's very interesting to show us that that's actually there. So I'm surprised to people because, once again, it's not being recognized that way. Quick thing on numbers. Is there a limit to how many state holidays we can have?
Not really. So I spent many, many years overseas in the Army, 12 years out of the country. And I lived in both in Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg in Germany for many years, about a decade of my life, actually, as a soldier, not including my time in Hanover as an exchange student. And each of the states in Germany, I know that it's different there because they had this long history of independent power as states and as kingdoms, what have you. But Bavaria had several more Catholic religious days than the rest of Germany did proper. And so there is not a limit. I know there is a danger because in Germany, we had the benefit of getting German holidays off and American holidays off in the United States Army, which is fantastic because it added like 5 or 6 days to our calendar to enjoy the family. But there is not a limit.
Huh. So other religions might want to jump in on this. Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Ramadan. I mean, there's a lot of religions with some big numbers of people that are Pennsylvanians that practice those religions. What about those trying to add some days as well for their important religious holidays?
Yeah, so I mean, you guys talk often about our democracy and on here. So, whoever that majority is, gets the benefit here. This democracy. While last year we did have a resolution recognizing Denali. And actually, Joel, that was the thing that sparked this whole idea here. I'm like, well, we're going to recognize, a religion that not a large a portion of the population celebrates a significant holy day. I'm not diminishing that at all. And I'm like, well, what about the majority of the population that does celebrate Good Friday? In Germany, not only is Good Friday a holy day, but also Easter Monday, Ostermontag, as they call it here. And that's a big weekend. And I remember, Joel, I don't know if it goes back in your roots and where you grew up in Pennsylvania, but I remember that growing up as a kid here, we did have Good Friday off from school. And so let's just bring it back. I mean, it's a big deal to connect with your family members. It's a special time. Yeah. I grew up obviously Roman Catholic. I guess you could detect with my funny last name with all the vowels in it. But we had of course the last dinner on Thursday. We go to mass, and then we had a big deal at church on Friday. And all the 50 members of the family or so would come over on Sunday to celebrate.
Well, I know some people were taking time anyway, like you said. They may have taken a day off to do it, but this would allow them to do it in a more structured way. I want to get to a couple other things with you real quick. Getting state employees to return to the office and making sure that's happening. Give us some benefits of that people might not think about that actually could help out the city even.
Yeah, so we have about 70-some thousand state employees across Pennsylvania. And come to find out, a good portion, at least 25%, statewide, but some departments, it's like 80-90% are still working remotely. So I have this bill in place. I don't think it's very controversial. I guess if you're affected by it, it is. But saying, the default setting is pre-2020. These working from home policies came out because of COVID.
Right.
COVID is now many years behind us here. Why are we still working like, George Jetson from that funny cartoon from the 70s and, working remotely? So why would I advocate for people working from, the office, actually back in their cubicles or office spaces here? And I need not do this, but I did it anyway. I looked into the efficacy of this, Joel, just to justify this legislation. And according to a study by the University of Chicago, the effectiveness of the employees to work increases by at least 15%. Now, we have state employees paid by the taxpayers, and if we're more efficient working together by in-person interaction, in-person meetings, cross-sharing data by people that are next to you, hey, I got this problem here, can you help me? Rather than a Zoom meeting. And so I'm like, let's get back to work. Now, look, this is not a heavy-handed, draconian, black and white kind of policy coming into place. If you have a situation with your family or your health or whatever that justifies a different accommodation, a hybrid program, or working from home, your frontline supervisor can allow you to do this. But the default setting is get back into the office.
Right. Well, and it's interesting, like you said, if there are some hybrid situations there that are working and you recognize that and if people don't abuse it, I think that would work out for everybody. All right, we got to a lot this week. I'm going to let you get back to your Holy Week and get your traffic regulations behind you. Always good to see you here on Face the State. Senator Mastriano, thanks for coming.
Thank you. God bless you. Have a great Easter and Passover.
Very good. We'll see you.
Bye.
All right, everybody. So this past week, the House returned to that slim Democratic majority, 102-101. What's it like to be in a slim spot like that so often? We're talking to one of the people tasked with keeping track of those votes. Stick around. And we're back. My next guest, responsible for keeping track of those votes for the Democrats in the State House, and they need every single one of them if they're going to push their agenda through. Out of Lehigh County, the Majority Whip, Representative Mike Schlossberg. Good to see you.
Glad to be here, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so how would you define what the whip really does?
So if you watch House of Cards, you probably have some pretty dangerous ideas about my role. First, my primary job is to make sure that the votes exist for our agenda. But at the same time, I'm not supposed to just be the bad guy. I'm supposed to work with our members, find out their concerns, and make sure that I'm doing whatever I can to allow our members to better serve their constituents at home. So my primary role is to make sure not only that we pass our agenda, but more importantly, that our agenda is in line with the will of the majority of Pennsylvanians.
I mean, it's Democrats. You got a slim majority. Do you know which people you might need to seek out to make sure that they're holding firm? Do they let you know, hey, I'm not voting for this one? How do you keep track of that stuff?
The answer is it goes both ways. And honestly, in my position, there's short term and there's long term. Short term, you go from vote to vote. But in the long term, you got to make sure that members are happy and are willing to accommodate their constituents' desires and what we need to do as a whole. that can absolutely be challenging. And who we need to talk to can sometimes vary from vote to vote. We are a big tent party. We are a humble majority. That means that there's times I got to talk with our more progressive members, and there's times I got to talk with our more conservative ones. But so far, so good. We've been able to keep us moving forward and trying to advance an agenda that I think reflects the interests of Pennsylvanians.
All right. So another name for the whip, the arm twister in charge. Is that it?
Well, sometimes arm twisting, but also sometimes the ego soother. I'm not supposed if all I do is break arms, at the end of the day, you just have a caucus that's very angry. I'm also supposed to be the one that finds solutions and that understands when potentially arm twisting might be involved, but also when you've got to try to find ways to encourage members to vote that doesn't involve breaking limbs.
I said twisting. You went right to breaking. I just want to point that out.
Oh, God.
Yes.
You know my secret. It's time to go.
Well, like I said, it is 102, 101. Special elections, how challenging was that to navigate that? Because you have that slim majority, now you don't, now you do again. Take me through a little bit of that.
So, unfortunately, tragically, we very unexpectedly lost a member, Representative Matt Gergely out of Allegheny County, and that was very tragic. And before we talk about anything else, I just need to acknowledge how personal that was. Obviously, to his family and friends and constituents, but also to his colleagues. We love Matt, and losing him so suddenly and so surprisingly was heartbreaking. But democracy goes on. We were fortunate enough to be able to elect a really good guy out of Allegheny County, a school board member, former police officer now, Dan Gogenauer. And Dan was elected in a special election. Candidly, it was a safe Democratic seat, so the election really wasn't all that challenging, but it did leave the House tied for a time, which meant that we had to negotiate with Republicans in order to elect our speaker, Joanna McClinton. We had to make sure that we acceded to some of their requests on rules and on legislation.
Yeah.
And in this instance, unlike I think what's happening at the federal level, our Republican counterparts had demands that we didn't like, but they were reasonable. And that's the way negotiation is supposed to work. And more importantly, that's the way government is supposed to work. It's supposed to reflect common sense compromise to advance the will of the people. And that's how we got to here.
Are you guys getting compromise on this one? You're part of the Mental Health Caucus. You've been pushing for more funding for mental health centers across the Commonwealth in this year's budget. What's that looking like?
So mental health is one of those areas where there is a lot of room for bipartisan compromise. It's something that's no longer seen as a Democrat or Republican issue, as an urban, suburban, or rural issue. It's an issue that absolutely cuts across every area of the Commonwealth. The governor's budget made some really solid investments in behavioral health, $100 million to school-based mental illness, another $20 million to counties, more money for diversionary courts, for crisis centers. There's a lot more we need to do, but the progress genuinely has been slow and steady. In the long run, three biggest priorities of mine from a behavioral health perspective: increasing reimbursement rates, increasing investments in the workforce so we can get more people into the field, and reforming the Mental Health Procedures Act. That's the act that's otherwise known as a 302, when someone is held against their will potentially because they're in some sort of behavioral health crisis. It's a multi-decade-old law. It desperately needs an overhaul, and that's something I've been working on.
I find that very interesting. Yeah, you answered one of my questions is, do we have enough professionals to even do this if you're putting more money into it? And obviously we don't yet. One of the saddest things is when someone takes that step to actually get help and they're like, great, we'll see you in 6 weeks. And like, that does not work.
Undeniably, the thing that we hear over and over again is, even among people who have good insurance and who recognize that there's a problem, they can't get the treatment that they need because there's not enough people in the workforce. And that's the area where I think we need to really put our money where our mouth is and get more people into the behavioral health field. Absolutely.
Definitely. But in the meantime, there is that 988 crisis number. It is specifically a suicide hotline, but just having that option there that is immediate is just amazing. I know we talked about a bill here recently about getting more information out about that and some marketing. So people need to know that's available for them. Where does that stand right now, and how do you feel about how that's gone so far, 988?
Absolutely. 988, when the number switched from a 1-800 number to 988, the calls increased exponentially, which was expected and frankly is a good thing because we want people to know that the help is available. Now, on our end, we've got to do more. We've got to invest in the infrastructure behind the 988 system. We've got to get more operators, and we've got to better market the number, because still surveys have shown that only a small percentage of Pennsylvanians even know that this number exists. Now, handedly, if we put more dollars behind marketing, we've got to have the infrastructure to back it up, because you can't have somebody call for help, know they're in a crisis, and not get the help that they need. Legislation has been introduced to better advertise the 988 system. It's a great idea. It needs to happen, but it needs to happen in tandem with increased funding to 988 and to the infrastructure behind 988.
Yep, definitely. All right, good stuff here. Thanks for clarifying some of the stuff with us. You're a very dangerous person. Limbs are not safe around you, but there's a reason that you are the majority whip. Thanks for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
All right. Hey, guys, our political insiders have plenty of opinions on everything you've heard so far. In particular, they're ready to discuss the latest lawsuit from Governor Shapiro aimed at the cuts to funding PA was counting on. We're getting into that and much more. Our insiders coming up. My favorite time of the week. Earlier in the week, I had my political insiders at the ball game. This time, we're a little more traditional. It's my favorite time of the week. Like I said, we got Democratic strategist Tony Lapore over here. Republican strategist Mike Regan is somewhere in the Zoomosphere, but we will talk to him in just a second as well. Oh, there's the Zoomosphere. Good to see you, my friend. All
nice
right.
to see you, too. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's get ready to go here. We're going to start with Dave McCormick talking about term limits. So this is pretty interesting stuff. One of the arguments for term limits, of course, is that politicians maybe they can vote for how they really feel rather than just thinking of the political consequences every time. We bring up term limits a lot. I'm starting with you, Tony. How come it just doesn't happen? Everyone talks about it. They run on it sometimes. But
yeah, term limits are an okay concept. But let me tell you what they do. Term limits empower staff, because you know what happens? Members come in, they leave, they're a short time, staff sticks around, staff gains enormous power, and they run the show, not the member. That's why they're not great.
Okay, what do you think, Mr. Regan?
Well, I think that's a good point. But I also think that you shouldn't be there forever. I think one of the things that's being looked at right now is the fact that these guys who make $200,000 a year somehow have $90 million in the bank. So there's something going on there. I think term limits would limit that. I think it's a very brave move for Dave McCormick to make, because he's not going to be popular amongst his colleagues for bringing something like that forward. But I think there needs to be something that limits your time there. You have to be there long enough to do something, but not there too long.
Let me talk about you. I mean, so you knew your last time was last year. Does it free up people to not worry about the next election or what my fellow Republicans or Democrats might think because of whatever? If you've got a great bill that you want to vote for, does it give you the freedom to just vote for it and not have to deal with everything else?
Well, for me, it was, I let everyone know 6 months in advance that I wasn't going to run for re-election. So it can cut two ways. One way is that you lose your political muscle because then they know they're not going to count on you for votes in the future. But that's when relationships come into play, and you can still get things done. At the end of the day, I had a really great grant year, and I also got some important bills done, school safety, and so I mean it worked out for me. But it's a slippery slope. You got to. I think it has to be nuanced, and it has to make sense.
Interesting.
Or you could just vote the way the constituents wanted you to vote to begin with.
Yes, I know, but we've heard it before. That's a great bill, but I can't vote for it. So maybe you can if you have the outs there coming up. Hey, the House Freedom Caucus, they didn't want to vote for the budget unless they got guarantees for deeper spending cuts. Speaker Johnson says eventually they said they're committed to $1.5 trillion in savings for the American people. The Senate bill didn't have as much. We'll see where they end up. How did you read what happened here? We'll start with you this time, Mike.
I think that Speaker Johnson showed that he's a force to be reckoned with. I'm sure the president is very happy with him for getting this done because there was some holdouts at the end that we talked about before. But I think this shows that he's a true player in this, and he got his way, which I think shows a lot of power.
They got there eventually. How
do we tell our grandparents that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, they're all on the chopping block now because of this deal? This Freedom Caucus are now the champions of taking money away from our seniors, from the people who work the hardest for us. It's a disaster. It is an unmitigated disaster, and I hate to see it.
Well, to get to their big numbers, that kind of stuff might be looked at, and they promised that it's safe. But
we'll see. It's not.
We'll see is the piece here. The U.S. Steel merger, this is one of those things that kind of goes in the tariffs. you don't know where you stand when President Donald Trump changes his mind so much. So he said that during the campaign he was against the deal. Recently he said, well, we need to look at this and get a fresh look. Then he's against the deal again. How do you move forward if you're a company when there's so much indecision here?
Well, what a surprise. The president decided he was for it, he was against it, he's a for it. It's a multi-billion-dollar company that wants to put money in jobs in Western Pennsylvania where we desperately need it. But the whims of the president, we'll see it now.
Mike Regan, U.S. Steel, what's happening here?
Well, look, this is right in the president's framework. Like, this is where he is so great. You dislike him for this and dislike him for that, but the art of the deal is his thing. He's making deals right now, and it may not always be readily evident to everybody what his purpose is, but he's doing something for a reason, and he's making deals. And ultimately, at the end, I'm convinced it's going to benefit Americans.
Once again, proof in the pudding. We're going to see what happens here.
Yeah.
But the indecision does put businesses in a bind, and that's the same kind of thing with tariffs. But I want to get to this with you guys next. Governor Josh Shapiro this week joining 15 other states. It's a lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's decision to revoke education funding that was promised after the COVID-19 pandemic. It was money to try to catch kids up and do things with it. $185 million for Pennsylvania schools is locked up right now and not going to come, it looks like, but now there's a lawsuit against it.
$185 million is real money. And anyone that wants to take that money away from our kids, my kids, your kids, it's crazy. There's no reason that money is to come to Pennsylvania, and to just unilaterally say, that money's not coming anymore is unfair. It's incredibly short-sighted, and it's bad for our kids.
Mike Regan, $185 million is a lot, and they were counting on this.
It is a lot, but we already spend $1 billion on education, and 80% of that $1 billion goes to teachers' pensions and salaries. So not much of that money is getting driven into the classroom anyway. So the fact that we spend $1 billion already should be enough. But I mean, I'm sure that public schools would like to have the extra money. I'd love to see how it was going to be spent.
Yeah, I think that was the tough time, is that expected versus unexpected. We'll see how that plays out. One more thing to talk about. Good Friday. Is it a good idea for a holiday? Stick around. So we found out Good Friday apparently is already a holiday. We just didn't know that. But for the ideas of these religious holidays to be state holidays, there could be a ton of these if it goes in this direction.
It should be 50 of them then. I don't know, 25, 30. Plus Pennsylvania, Quaker tradition. That's what it's formed of. I think this is too much.
Mike Regan, how many is too many? Where do we draw the line? Should we?
Well, I feel like you cannot celebrate our Lord too much, so I'm all for it. But it does get to a point where, what are we talking about? There's too many.
Yeah.
But I like that one.
Well, this one's interesting because, like we heard, maybe it's already a holiday. We just got to look into it. So we appreciate breaking some news here for you on Face the State. Enjoy your weekend, no matter what you're celebrating, folks. We'll see you next week.